Leader Jeffries. I want to talk about another provision that I described earlier as, I think, insidious. You and I, 4 years ago, Mr. McGovern, many of us were on the floor of the House on January 6th. There's a provision in this bill, this payday provision, for 8 Republican senators connected to January 6th, and I suspect you share the same outrage that I have about it. I wonder if you and Whip Clark might talk a bit about it.
Yeah, I'll yield to Whip Clark initially on it, and then we'll certainly have more to say.
This particular provision would be outrageous in the best of times. To say that we are going to use our appropriations process to put in specific personal payments to 8 specific senators in relation to an investigation, this is guaranteed money, as our colleague from Georgia pointed out. It is outrageous. And I heard our colleague, and I appreciated his comments and his candor about it. But what struck me was his reluctance to act in this moment. This is exactly the moment where we are not Democrats or Republicans, we're Americans who have identified something wrong, a payout in a bill when Americans are waving their hands and saying, we're not making it in this economy. We're not making it in this system. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And if we cannot reject and demand that that get out and proceed quickly with our work, then I would question what you think you're doing here. I don't think we have heard a single person try and muster any defense of this payout that was snuck into this bill. And the fact that at minimum we're going to pay U.S. sitting senators $8 million while we dismantle health care for people, while they can't afford to buy meat and coffee and groceries, they can't afford their electric bills. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? We have to be able to say no to this. This is blatant corruption and payouts that were snuck in, and we have to do this now. There's no excuse in the world for not acting.
Thank the distinguished gentleman for that question. It's extraordinary. And, for the American people, it's important to understand. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar slush fund that is in this bill for 8 Republican senators who apparently believe they're part of the House of Lords, because that's something that would be done if you think you're a lord, not someone who is subject to the rule of law. That's extraordinary to me. And unfortunately, it appears that despite how outrageous this provision is, my Republican colleagues are prepared to vote for it here before the Rules Committee and tomorrow on the House floor, while at the same period of time can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans. It's shocking, and it speaks for itself. And the American people are going to reject. This is real-time corruption that's on full display. A multi-million-dollar slush fund for 8 Republican senators that every single House Republican is apparently prepared to sign off on. And if you vote for it, you own it.
Well said, Leader Jeffries. With that, I'll yield to the chairman.
Ranking
member.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Scott cited KFF, and I just kind of did a little search here. He cited KFF as saying that there is a 26% increase in premiums. I just want to share what KFF said as to why rates are going up, and let me quote them. The amount insurers charge for ACA marketplace premiums is rising for several reasons, including but not limited to increasing hospital costs, the rising popularity of expensive GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, and the threat of tariffs. These factors are similarly cited by insurers selling employer coverage. However, an additional factor driving up the amount insurers charge for ACA marketplace premiums is the expected expiration of the enhanced premium tax credit, end quote. I thank the gentleman.
I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back, and I now recognize myself for my time of questioning. I would refer everybody to my prior comments. We have to get the government back open. There are things that are not ideal in this bill. There are things that are highly suspect that were put in by the Senate. But if we try to fix it at this point in history, after 40-some days of a shutdown, we have no choice but to send it back to the Senate, and they will not be back until Monday. My people cannot suffer anymore. As I said before, my district has an average take-home pay of less than $51,000, and I'm 409th out of 435 in the nation. We don't need any more suffering. We can't take any more suffering. I have to vote to open the government back up, notwithstanding it's an imperfect process and notwithstanding there's things that I would like to vote to change. Because it has taken this long, we cannot wait any longer. And I yield back and now recognize Ms. Ledger-Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, Republicans keep saying, and placing, I think, what would be described as a false choice, which is what we just heard, that you cannot fund the government and extend the tax cuts. You cannot fund the government and remove that reprehensible provision, which I am calling a payola, and still move forward on funding the government. They have a choice. I have an amendment, and we will ask each of the Republicans on this committee, are you going to vote for millions and millions of dollars to go to those 8 senators and not a dime for enhanced tax credits for people's health insurance? And so I wanted to ask you, Hakeem, Leader Jeffries, also Hakeem, I wanted to ask you to...
I still go by Hakeem.
You took it by Hakeem. So is it possible, like they have the power to do this? Why is it that they think that they cannot act? Because this is something that is possible. So I'd love for you to talk about this choice that they keep providing us that says we can't do that, we can't do this, we can't do that. Why can't we vote to fund the government, vote to extend the tax credits, vote to remove that horrendous provision?
It is absolutely the case, and I thank the distinguished gentlelady from the great state of New Mexico for that question. It is absolutely the case that this corrupt provision can be removed and should be removed. It can be struck if the amendment is made in order here before the Rules Committee, the amendment that you are offering, the amendment that I know will be discussed and debated. No one can defend this provision. And in allowing it to happen, it's bad enough that Donald Trump publicly proclaimed that he's got 2 titles, that he's the president and the Speaker of the House. But now the Republican-controlled House of Representatives wants to act subservient to the United States Senate. When I read the Constitution, we're separate and co-equal parts of the legislative branch. It's in Article 1. In fact, the House of Representatives is the first amongst equals, first institution mentioned in Article 1. And by the way, we've got the power of the purse. The House, we were given that power by the framers of the Constitution. The Senate wasn't. The Senate was given the confirmation power. And it's bad enough that we've already given away our authority to the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who brags about him being the Speaker of the House. But now we're letting 8 senators conducting themselves like they're the House of Lords. airdrop at the 11th hour, this corrupt provision, and now our Republican colleagues are claiming there's nothing we can do about it? I mean, that's extraordinary. We've said in the House, and I'm proud to be part of the People's House, that we don't like to be jammed by the Senate on policy. And we should never be jammed by the Senate on policy. But now you're allowing the Senate to jam House Republicans to enrich themselves. I mean, that's unconscionable. That's unpatriotic. And that's un-American.
Thank you, Hakeem Jeffries. And, earlier we also heard some of the representatives in this committee sort of attack the Affordable Care Act. They contested Rep. Clark's, you're pointing out how important these subsidies are for Georgians and how their costs will increase. And if you look at the news articles coming out of Georgia, one of them from one of their WJBF says, marketplace enrollment in Georgia has doubled since the enhanced credits took effect. The Georgia Recorder headline says, expiration of the ACA tax credit spells disaster for rural Georgia. And the fact that the ACA and these tax cuts pushed enrollment to new highs. 24 million more people signed up. And these are the things that we're worried about. And when they attack the ACA, I think about, and they attack these tax credits, I think about the women. You pointed out some of those impacts. But think about the women who are going to be negatively impacted when they allow these tax credits to expire and when those Medicaid cuts go into effect. Rep. Clark, can you talk about what that means for American women and families if the Republican policies go into effect?
Thank you for the question. And I'm sure that your experience has been very much like mine. We were talking about the Kaiser Family Foundation numbers. On average, the ACA premiums are going up over $1,000, $1,026 in a monthly payment. And you think about the mom that I met at a food bank just a few days ago, and she had really narrowed what she was eating to a few crackers a day because she wanted to make sure that her children, when she was unsure that that SNAP benefit was coming, and she's already working 2 jobs as a single mom to keep food on her table, to keep the lights on, to try and keep a shelter, and trying to hide all of this from her kids so they can go to school and learn and not be anxious. That is hard. That is sacrifice. And we talked today to veterans who said to me, fight on. To this morning in Arlington, Massachusetts. And we talked in our comments about veterans today about sacrifice and what it means to put it all on the line for your country. That is what we ask hardworking Americans to do all the time. Get up, work hard, and try and get ahead. And they are telling us this system doesn't work for us. I would join any one of my colleagues in working on overhauling our healthcare system. It wasn't working well for people before they took an axe to all of it and all of the supports. But when we're here on Veterans Day, talking about sacrifice and courage, if we cannot find the courage to at least speak out, and as the leader said, when we're not going to find a dime in this budget to give people health relief, when we are not going to talk about restoring the almost $200 billion cut to SNAP that was made before they politicized it as a weapon, we certainly owe those who don the uniform of our country to be able to stand up and say, we have identified a wrong in this budget in creating a personal fund for 8 select senators, millions of dollars that could flow to them. And we can't stand up and demand that we do better, then it's time to think of something else to do, if that's the kind of decision. Because what's hard is to be a single mom in this country and trying to get that little bit of breathing room. And we can certainly look them in the eye and say, we are fighting for you, and we are not going to stand for blatant corruption in this CR.
Thank you for fighting for the women of America and for all the families of America, wherever they happen to live, Republican or Democratic districts. And with that, if there is nothing else, as the last Democrat on the panel, I yield back.